Hi, I'm Tom Migot from Tom Migot Photography. Before we dive into today's topic, which is about the new feature in Lightroom which enables you to merge your images to build a panorama, I want to share with you great news. I have just finished developing the new version of my tommigotphotography.com website. Why is it a great news for you? Well, because I made it mobile friendly, which means that now you can go and visit the website and use your favorite mobile device, whether it's an iPad, an Android, whatever you use, and the experience is much better. But why would you want to go to tommigotphotography.com in the first place? Good question. Well, easy answer really, because everything that I've ever published on YouTube is actually on my website, as well as every time that I've ever published a YouTube video, I've always written an article to go alongside and giving you more insight, more detail on the topic that is covered in the video. So how does my website look? Well, it looks exactly the way you see here. You can find all the details about the work that I do beside publishing content on the web. So you can find the type of photography that I do, the type of gallery that I do, and so on. On the front page, you can see the latest video that I've published, as well as a list of the last 4 articles that I've written, and also some of my recent work that is posted here. With regard to education, and by education I mean everything to know about how to learn photography, or everything that is related to photography, then you have the education menu here, and you have the photography workshop that I do here in Scotland and across UK. But what is directly related to videos on YouTube is the blog. Obviously the videos, you can find them, they're all sorted by year to make things easier, but the blog, which also contains the videos, here you have it. The blog hasn't really changed per se. You go into it and now you have the ability to actually rate the article if you like it, and at the bottom of it you can now leave a comment if you want to, so, or ask question on the topic covered in that article. So I hope you found this interesting, and for those of you who follow me on YouTube and didn't know about tommigotphotography.com, well, now you do. So enough for this. Let's go into Lightroom, because this is what we're going to talk about today. New feature I introduced in Lightroom 6 was Photo Merge. We saw that in the very first episode. We could do HDR, high dynamic range images, using the Photo Merge feature. But we can also do Panorama. For those of you who do not know what a panorama is, it's not necessarily a photograph taken with a wide-angle lens. It's basically a process consisting in stitching multiple images to produce a rather wide image, whether it's horizontal, as it tends to be most of the time, but it can also be done vertically, and Lightroom can do both. If you didn't have Lightroom 6, meaning before it was released, you could still do Panorama from Lightroom. You would actually select all your images like I do now, do a right click, and instead you would go to Edit In and go up Merge to Panorama in Photoshop, like you could do as well Merge to HDR in Photoshop. But now we have a new feature, it's Photo Merge and Panorama. So before I click this, to illustrate this feature, I've actually went yesterday, and I'm not lying, it's yesterday, look at the date here. The 3rd of June 2015. I'm not big in doing panorama. This is not something that I produce a lot, but I do sometime. So I didn't have much content to really illustrate this feature, so I said to myself, well, it's a beautiful day in Scotland, and let's go there. So I actually went to a town that is called North Berwick. It's written North Berwick, but it's pronounced North Berwick. It's on on the east side of Edinburgh, along the Firth of Forth, and not far from the North Sea. And I was lucky that it was actually low tide at the time when I went there, and I think it was, what time, 7 p.m, I think it was somewhere like that. And I was able to actually climb on this little pier and have this beautiful view of the water, the beach, and North Berwick. And what you see, that little mount that you have behind right there, is called the Law, L-A-W. And at the top of it, which you might not be able to see, let me zoom in, is this little arch right here. It used to be a whale jaw. Yeah, a whale jaw. And actually now it's been replaced because it's been moved to Edinburgh Museum but right now it's actually made of plastic, but it's still there, and you still have some blockhouse to check if the Germans were coming in during the Second World War. Anyway, what I did was taking multiple exposures, and as we can see here, we've got 7 exposures. And to do an for Panorama Merge, what you do is you do a right click and you do Photo Merge Panorama. You can also do it from the menu at the top. You do Photo Merge Panorama, or Control M. Whether you're on a Mac or PC, it's the same. So you click this, and then you have this new window here, very similar to the HDR window, and it's creating a preview for you. So what do we have on the right? First off, let's focus on the preview. The preview that you have here, I could actually reduce its size, or I could make it bigger. Here, it might not look that big because I have a huge screen. This is a 5K iMac that I have, and there is a limit to the size of that preview. The limit is, if you're on the high definition display, this is going to be 2048 pixels. I'm talking about the longest age of your image. Or if you're on a standard display, not high resolution display, the limit will be 1024 pixels. So that's for the limit of the preview. The options are on the right, and what we see here is the projection options, and we have 3 of them. Let me untick the auto crop so you guys can see really the effect of every single projection option. The auto crop is basically the same tool as the crop inside Lightroom, meaning that it's not destructive. So even if you take auto crop here, you can still change your crop afterwards. You haven't lost anything. So let's untick this, and now you can see the magic behind. Basically, you can really see how the images have been stitched together. Let's start with spherical. Well, now it's building the preview. So you see the changes that has been applied. Spherical, you need to see it as where the stitching happens, where it's basically as if it was done inside a sphere. And that's the reason why the centerpiece of your panorama is going to have a tendency of being closer to you. So because it's that sphere. This is very good if you want to do 360 panorama. What is a 360 panorama? It's easy. You take multiple exposures and you just basically rotate on yourself and make it a 360 view. And capture it and use a spherical. Tends to give you the best result. Then you have cylindrical. Cylindrical, what it will do, it will have a tendency of stretching your image upward. And have a look at this particular rock here in the corner. If I actually go to cylindrical, look what it does. It's very interesting. You see this? In spherical, the rock was tend to be more flat and narrower. I'm going back to spherical for a second. You see? Kind of stretched as well on the side. So cylindrical. Which one to choose? Well, for me, I like to have the result of my panorama matching the reality of things. So, what is the reality, you may say? Well, I'm going to just reduce the size like this. And here you see the original. This is the original picture. You can see that rock. For me, that rock looks very similar to the rock that we see here in cylindrical. Whereas if I go to spherical, it's a total different matter. You see, it's not the same rock. So I wouldn't go with spherical here. But interestingly, if you let Lightroom decide for you, and remember, Lightroom, your camera, all those are just tools. They ain't got no brain. And I like to think that you guys, you have brain. Reason is, you watching me. Therefore, you have brain. So, joke aside, if you let Lightroom decide what it thinks is the most appropriate, it thinks. There's already something wrong here, grammatically speaking. Anyway, if you actually take this, it will select which projection it feels is the most appropriate. And for me, every time I've used this feature, it always went with spherical. But I'm smarter than tool, and I want to go with cylindrical. The third one I haven't talked about, and the reason is, it's perspective. Perspective is some cylindrical. First of all, I forgot to mention, why is it called like this? Because it's kind of as if you were basically stitching your images as if it was on an unrolled cylinder. So that's why it tends to straighten up. It's very good if you have very wide images that you want to stitch together with wide angle. That will do a nice job. Also, good to know is that the merging tool tend to perform much better when the lens correction has been applied to images, but you don't need to think about it, because even though whether or not you have applied the lens correction to all your single image, Lightroom, when you do the merge, will actually activate the lens correction. Try to find a profile if it finds one and apply it before doing the merge. So perspective. Perspective here for some reason doesn't work on this image. Why? I have no clue. It just doesn't. Perspective is a projection mode that is really good at straightening your line, making sure that your vertical and your horizontal lines are good. And therefore, it makes it a good option to use if you do architectural work, because you want to make sure your lines are straight. So here it doesn't work, but I'm going to show you in a second how the perspective would look. So I'm going back to cylindrical, and I'm going to apply the auto crop, and I'm just going to do the merge. And now it's going to create my panorama. So while it's doing this, and it's doing in the background, so I don't need to be stuck on that page right now, I'm just going to go show you the different projections. I was in the hills several weeks ago when I was doing a video specifically in French. It was an advert for what I do, and I was in the hills, and I knew I had this upcoming video about the merge for Panorama, and so I needed to take a couple of exposures like this. Strangely enough, if you wonder what that format of initial image is, it's simply a 16:9 ratio. It's crazy. Usually when I do landscape photography, I tend to put my camera in a 16:9 ratio, and when I did this, I actually forgot to change it, so I ended up doing a portrait-oriented picture while I was still on 16:9, so which is absurd, but that's the reason behind this huge format. So anyway, this is the view when you do a panorama using the spherical approach. Look at how this mount here kind of in the middle of the frame and kind of close to you. If now I'm going to cylindrical, you see how it tends to back up a little bit. And now if I actually go with perspective, which we haven't seen yet, look at that. It goes even further away, straighten your horizon, and doing this kind of bow tie effect going on either way. And you know, every time it creates the merge, it always starts with the center frame. Here we have 3, so it's fairly easy which one it started with. Or started from. So that's it. I just wanted to show you the different projections. So if I'm going back to the singles here, great view, and we can see the resulting panorama. So this is the panorama here. Let's leave it a second to load. Here we go. Pretty cool thing. Is it the best thing? Is it better than Photoshop? There's less option than in the Photoshop one. Is that the best tool out there anyway to do panorama? I'll let you judge of that. What I'm happy about is that Lightroom enables you to do that straight out of the box. It's very quick to do. And the cool thing you could think of is, what if you wanted to do HDR and panorama? Before I talk about this, I just want to talk to you about a limit when it comes to merging your files. There is a limit. The limit is that the resulting image from that merging needs to not be bigger than 64,000 on the longest edge, whether it's the vertical one or the horizontal one. 64,000 pixels long is the maximum for your merging result. That's huge. It's huge, but if you do 360, that means that, you know, don't do 100 pictures at once, because chances are it might not work unless you have a very low quality sensor. In that case, it may work. So that is the limit with the longest edge. The other limit is the overall number of pixels. So if your resulting image is would be more than 512 megapixels, then the merge would actually fail. So I just wanted to share that with you. So don't go too crazy on this. So what I want to talk to you, HDR and panorama. if you wanted to do this, you would have two options really. You could potentially take all your HDR single images, then build your panorama of, and you would end up having 3 panorama, for example, one underexposed, one correctly exposed, and one overexposed, and then do the merge out of those 3 panorama. The risk that you may have is that doing that, if your panorama is big, you may actually fall into the limit that I've just mentioned, the 64,000 pixels or the 512 megapixels in that resulting image. So to prevent this, the best approach, I think, is to actually treat your single images as HDR first and then do the merge for the panorama. What does that mean? Well, to illustrate this and keep that same photos, what I've done is I've actually created a fake HDR. What is a fake HDR? Well, fake HDR, by fake HDR, I mean I'm going to be using fake bracketed images. Why fake bracketed images? Well, it's very simple to do. I'm going back to my singles, right? I've got all these frames here, and what I did was basically creating 2 virtual copies for every single frame. And then on every single virtual copy, I would go to the develop module and I would change the exposure value here, and I would go, one would be -2, and then the other virtual copy would be +2. So I would have the original image that would be 0, correctly exposed, -2 being the underexposed virtual copy, +2 would be the overexposed virtual copy. And then I end up having 3 images. So here I show you the result. Those are the virtual copies that I basically created as, I basically built my virtual copies and then I exported them from Lightroom into DNG. That's the reason why you don't see the virtual copy sign, but it will work just the same. So I ended up taking those, and then ended up making my HDR. Here you have the HDR individually. And this is the result of the panorama. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that one to here so we can actually see the result. So this was before, simple panorama straight out of the camera almost, with no settings applied to your image, purely a raw. And the panorama, if I haven't mentioned it, is a DNG file. It's a raw file, which means that you don't need to bother making changes to your individual image, and I'm going to talk about this in a second as well. And this is the HDR. I'm not big on HDR, but God knows I like this. It's not a true HDR per se, but look at this. It did the work for me. I quite like it. I like the fact that now the rocks are brighter. I quite like it. And now I would actually start doing some development on this image. Maybe darken it slightly, the sky, bring some highlight, although there's no burn detail here. But that's a start, and it's a good start, I think. What I wanted to say about making your development on the individual image. That panorama here is actually not tied to the individual image. It's a real image. In fact, if I do right click and show in the Finder because I'm on the Mac, you can see here is the image. It's a real image, and you see it's 296 megabytes in size. It's a real raw file, which means that if I make changes to this panorama, it's not going to alter my individual files. It's not a virtual copy at all. But what about the other way around? Well, the thing is, if you actually make a change and development to your individual pictures, those changes are not automatically carried over into the panorama. It will really depend on what you're doing. But if you want to use brushes or radial filter, for example, let me give it a try. If I use the radial filter, I'm just going to create a stupid, that would be really stupid to do this, but here we go, I am sometime. And I'm just going to make a panorama. So let's select all these files and do a Control. Remember, Control M will open the window. Another tip for you, if you actually do Shift Control M, it will not open the window, but it will create a panorama using the last setting of your panorama that you produced. So it's a bit quicker, enables you to do kind of batch work if you want to do this, which is what I did for the HDR. When I had all this HDR to do, well, I basically choose the first one, and then after every others, I did Shift Control H. That's the same background effect for the HDR merging. So it's creating my panorama now, and we'll see, and there will be no effect whatsoever. You will not see that circle, that stupid effect from the radial filter. And so it's happening in the background, so I can just go away from there. So I'm just trying to think, is there anything else that I did not mention? I don't think so. I think I told you everything that there is to know about this new feature. And it's a bit slow to create, but there's a lot of images here. Tell me in the comment what you think, or go to migotphotography.com. There will be a new blog entry here, a new post with all the details that we covered in this blog. You will be able to see the pictures maybe a little bit better than on your screen. And here we have the resulting images right here. And as you can see, there is no purple circle on the image. It's exactly the same as the one before. And then we go to the HDR version of it, which is actually not bad. So this is it for today, folks. Until next time, this is Migot saying, if you like it, well, capture it. Maybe make a panorama out of it and give it a try. Lightroom 6, Merge, Panorama. Ciao.